So it's 12:39. We're going to get started about 30 seconds early. I want to welcome you to our 12:40 session of UT Social Media Week 2014. I'm Courtney Childers, one of the committee members for this year's event. And again, thank you so much for being here. We have a wonderful panel, 5 very distinguished panelists here to talk about a very timely topic, which is social media and bullying, sometimes known as cyberbullying. We tried to put together a panel that had various perspectives and angles on the issue as a whole, and so hopefully you'll enjoy the next hour or so session. We're going to make sure that we leave at least 15-20 minutes at the end for questions, and we have a mic to pass around, so you all will be asking the questions and stay engaged. As the session proceeds, you don't hear this much from a faculty member, but we welcome you to tweet during the next hour or so. So we're using the hashtag UTSMW. Feel free to ask questions via Twitter. Use the hashtag throughout, and we'll try to make sure that some of the Twitter questions get addressed at the very end too. Okay? So very quickly, I want to introduce our panelists before we get started. To my far right on the screen, we have a Skype guest from Cincinnati. This is lawyer Jennifer Branch from Gerhardstein and Branch law firm. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you. Can you change the camera so I can see the panel?
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Next, we have Andria Yates. She is principal of Development Concepts and also a member of the UT Department of Psychology. Next, we have Sally Taylor from Peninsula, which is a division of Park West Medical here in town. Then we have Annie Sadler, who is here representing one of our sponsors for the week, WATE. Yes. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Tearsa. And Annie is the social media director at WATE. And then finally here on the end, we have Tearsa Smith, who you may recognize as a morning anchor for WATE. And again, she's here representing our sponsor. And we thank WATE among Calhoun's and Coca-Cola, which those of you who are coming in late, free Coca-Cola beverages back in the back corner. And feel free to help yourself at any point. Okay? In addition to questions at the end, we also have some cool giveaways. So stick around. It'll be worth it. All right? So I'm going to turn the session over to our wonderful panelists. Each has a diverse perspective, like I said, and we'll let whomever wants to start go ahead. But we're going to hit all angles from legal to counseling to media coverage, et cetera, for a very, very timely issue of social media and bullying. Thanks for being here.
Well, I guess I'll start off. I'm Annie Sadler. I do all of our social media stuff, and then and I cover most of the stuff in the evening time. We found that a lot of people are on social media, and then Tearsa handles a lot of it during the morning. So a lot of my job is kind of teasing to kind of our later shows. And one of, I guess, the craziest examples of cyberbullying that I saw so far, we did a story about a stalker. And basically, it was running in the 11. The investigators had called our reporter, and they had asked that we interview him and interview the woman that was being stalked in order to kind of put it out there in order to catch this guy, because they couldn't find him anywhere. So she went and did an interview, and we didn't release any names. We didn't release the school that she was at, and we were putting it together for the 11. Well, Knox County Schools representative called us, and they said, you know, we don't really want you to release the school. She was a teacher, and I guess the guy had been stalking her at school, and she was teaching school, like younger school children. So I'm teasing this, and within 45 minutes, we had about 1,000 shares, you know. So it pretty much went viral very quickly. And what was the scary part is this guy actually had a couple fake profiles, and the guy that they were looking for started posting on our thread. And he posted as a couple different people. I'm not exactly sure that it was him, but we were pretty sure. And he kept on posting the name of the teacher, and she didn't want her name out there, you know, because she was dealing with all of this issues. And so I'm going through trying to hide the posts. I'm like wondering if I should take down the post completely. And all the while we're getting like thousands and thousands of comments on there. And the investigators are calling us back, and they're saying, we don't want you to completely take down this post because we're using the Facebook post to go find this guy. And he starts putting threats against some of our viewers, and I'm going through and trying to hide it. Well, the story airs at 11, and we got even more people talking on our Facebook page. And it went into the morning, and I'm sitting there going, how am I supposed to go through 1,000 comments refreshing to try to hide all of these posts, where he's making, comments against our viewers, posting pictures of guns, and all of that. So it turns out that somebody in Texas, I think it was his cousin or something like that, actually saw our post from our local TV station and convinced this guy to turn himself in. And so it was interesting to me to see that, because a lot of times we're removed from it, but to see it up close and personal and everything. So.
I feel so funny with the mic stand, so I'm just going to take that off for a second. I would say, when I first got the invitation to do the seminar, I thought, okay, we're probably going to just focus on elementary age kids and bullying. But, after thinking for a while, especially with what we do, we see a lot of bullying in different forms into adulthood, which has been always so interesting to me, because when I first started in news, let me take you back in time. This is really before the internet, which I know I look very young, but when I first started, we didn't have all of, Facebook and Twitter we just did it old school. We hit the pavement, we went out and got a story, came back, turned it for the news, and then we were done. The good thing about social media is that we're able to tell people about our stories that probably didn't have time to watch TV all day to see the promotions, and we're able to reach people, get them information fast, which is ultimately our goal. But also with that, and I don't know if you all have ever paid attention to any comments board, whether it's the local newspaper, a national newspaper, a TV station, if you want action and if you want to bring the drama with a little hint of the random and crazy, check out a comment section. They take you to places you didn't even see coming. In terms of, you think people are just going to post their opinion or the reaction to a story, but you get sometimes people that are very passionate, almost to one end, where they're saying things that they're attacking another person who is commenting and giving their opinion. So I think one of the good things is having someone pretty much almost always manning the Facebook page for the station is we have to kind of police almost 24/7 and make sure that we're on one accord about what we take down and what we don't. We pretty much give you free range to say what you need to say, as long as you're not violent, as long as you aren't berating another person, threats or obscenities, those types of things we take down. But for the most part, we'll leave up most comments, even when you're looking at them going, should I, if it meets the criteria, then we leave it up. With that said, when it comes to adults and bullying, it's very interesting. Sometimes you'll see the lengths that people will take something as simple as and it could be something real simple. It doesn't have to be like a highly passionate story. It doesn't have to be like an abortion story or a politics. I mean, it could be something simple like, hey, TVA is going to lower the water so that, folks can get out on their boat. And you'll be so surprised how it will go into a heated conversation within a matter of minutes. So upon reflection, we see it's not just students that are dealing with bullying. You'll start to see it into adulthood. I'm pretty sure you all see it on the collegiate level as well. I'm pretty sure that's always very interesting when it comes to social media on the collegiate level. But we see it in adulthood as well. Put that back on the mic stand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you just
My bad.
Well, I can speak from an adolescent perspective. I've been the adolescent therapist for Peninsula Outpatient for the past about 10 years. And more recently, I'd say probably in the past 2 or 3 years, I've just seen a huge jump in the amount of kids that I get in my groups that have depression, that have anxiety, and a lot of it is over cyberbullying. We have these new things, Twitter, we have Snapshot is like the most recent thing, and I don't know if you all are familiar with it, but it's 10 seconds and it disappears. So you can write whatever you want and it's gone. So I've kind of seen it from a very negative, I don't want to say negative aspect, but, in my case with the depression and anxiety with all these kids, I mean, it's become so easy to bully and I think it's been a detriment in a lot of ways to this population, this generation.
Hi. So I teach an adolescent development class here at UT, but I'm actually sitting on the panel to bring in a different perspective, although I think we've already heard something about adults and the kind of cyberbullying that can happen locally with presumably adults. We might wonder sometimes the behavior that they're showing us. It's not very adult-like. We don't tend to think, John, turn it. Okay, thanks. But I also work with individuals and organizations outside of the university community. And so if you were in my adolescent development class, and since this is being recorded for posterity, I decided not to do this, but I'd ask how many of you have ever seen Jimmy Kimmel? You know what I'm talking about if I say Jimmy Kimmel?
So, great show on ABC.
Right after the 11 o'clock news.
Oh gosh, I did a good thing there, right?
Good job.
I could have said Jimmy Fallon. No, actually Jimmy Kimmel now. So how many of you have ever caught when he shows mean tweets? You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So I had a couple of mean tweets loaded up, but then I looked at them and I thought, too many beeps, too many words that probably aren't terribly appropriate for right now. That is a late night show, right? So, but if you've never heard of it, go take a look, because I think the perspective I'd like to bring is that while we rally around adolescents and that bullying, can hurt adolescents in many different ways, even though it's the sticks and stones approach, it can hurt adults too. But when you think about celebrities, do you think that it's cyberbullying when someone's mean to a celebrity? I don't know what your take is. I mean, have they put themselves out there so they're kind of opening themselves up to be treated that way? Well, go watch George Clooney read his mean tweet, or Jennifer Garner read her mean tweet. It's all on YouTube. You can find it if you're interested in that. But what we see is that we don't tend to have a lot of empathy at large for celebrities in our society. But this sort of thing occurs for just adults who have their own blogs. Have any of you ever heard of Get Off My Internets? GOMI is, so I'm seeing some heads. I happen to know about it because of a friend who's been attacked there and has her own forum. And so the whole approach to Get Off My Internets is that if you have a public blog, or even for some people a public Facebook or Instagram or Twitter that anybody can go see, it's open season for people not only to dislike what you do, but to go and snark about it 24/7. And where this, you might say again, well, okay, that's sort of celebrity-like. They're putting themselves out there for it. But when, and I reviewed several of these last night on one particular forum, someone's children's photographs were posted, their home, talking about the way they dressed for work. So it really, these kinds of things we would think are not, appropriate for just those of us who don't earn millions of dollars in films. It's happening. Let me ask you another question. How many of you have ever heard of Rate My Professor? Don't I get some reaction there? Some of the best advice I got years ago was don't go look at it. So I think it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago. Now, don't all you go to look at Rate My Professor for me, because I guess I better go look at it now if you might. But one of my colleagues said, don't bother, because you're going to get people who are really angry, and you're going to get people who really like you, but most people don't go say anything about it. So why do I bring that up? If you, for those of you who go to work for companies after you finish your education here, is it possible you might go to work in PR or social media management or something to do with helping companies manage their social media presence? I mean, that's a possibility for some of you, I think. So if your companies, can companies be cyberbullied? What do you think?
I would say yes, and we've had to deal with that quite a bit, and it's interesting kind of how you deal with that kind of issues.
So the whole, and so I certainly think companies can be. I have watched companies be cyberbullied online, and you might say, well, if it's on their Facebook page, it's like customer service issues, right? But where do you cross the line between customer service and just being intentionally mean and trying to harm a business? And I think some of us look at that line where if you're not going to the company directly, but you're on a Facebook page or you're on Twitter and you're not engaging with the company to try to give them honest, constructive, possibly feedback. So there are entire organizations like the Get Off My Internets for individuals that are dedicated to trying to harm companies. So cyberbullying, you might think, again, it's just an adolescent who's going through teen angst. But this can go into if you run a business or you're working for a business. So I guess I just wanted to introduce that it's a much bigger topic than you might have thought coming in the door. And that's just, scratching the surface of it.
You kind of opened up a door that I was thinking of. Are most of you all journalism majors, or is it different majors in here? Okay. One of the things I think that we have to deal with when we get story pitches, when people are calling in, because everyone feels that their story is the story that will be the story to end all stories. Like, I got a story for you, and then you got to kind of feel through if it really is a story. And one of the issues that I've noticed we've always had to deal with is trying to gauge what's bullying. This is for parents calling in about their kids. What's bullying, and what is a situation that just needs conflict resolution? Kids will have arguments. Kids will not like each other. Kids will fight, just like adults. But because the internet is scary, I'm a parent, and it is scary to me that one day that my kids will grow up in a different type of society than I did. Everything is permanent. Like, once it's on the internet, it is hard to get it off of the internet. And I think for a lot of parents, it is scary if they feel like their child is being targeted. This is bullying. They said something bad about my child. Whereas it may just be, okay, a kid said something nasty, and it was horrible. But it's not bullying where it's the constant torment, the constant, posting, prodding, making fun of. And that's the issue I feel like we have to deal with a lot of times, is trying to let parents know, where's that line between bullying and, you might just need to school to bring somebody down to the office.
And I would say, one of the issues that we've dealt with a lot of times is, parents will share things, and they share it on our site, and obviously we have close to 4 million people per week that are visiting our site on a weekly basis, and it'll get shared 100 times, and it's a lot of he said, she said. I mean, it's stuff that we couldn't really ever do a story. We can't fact check it. And it's not something that we would necessarily report on just because we can't get that kind of basis. But then on the other hand, we've also covered stories for Twitter accounts from local high schools where they'll put mean tweets about students. And, I think it's just difficult, especially working with the school system, because a lot of times we get comments from them. They don't know how to deal with a lot of this because it's online, it's outside of school, but it's affecting people in the school system. So.
Now, you all feel free to jump in with questions at any time. We're just talking about our lives right now.
Oh, we've got
So let's hear from Jennifer, who's been sitting there very patiently.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer has tried a couple of cases on this issue here recently, so definitely probably want to bring in the legal perspective as well.
This might be a good time for me to weigh in, because a lot of what you're saying sounds very familiar. I have to say that what I deal with are high school students who are being bullied, which before the word bullying became popular was called harass. And a lot of it is sexual harassment, which in public schools is prohibited because Title IX requires the school districts protect children from sexual harassment. And what I've seen is it just takes on a totally different form today than it did, let's say, 15 years ago when I had my first case that I guess would be called bullying, which was a lesbian student being, derogatory comments being made against her, being called names, being threatened, feeling like she can't go to school anymore, and the school district was ignoring everything she and her mom did. Well, to fight with the school district just to get them to say, we should protect her because she's gay or lesbian, just like we would protect anyone from sexual harassment, was huge. And today, 15 years later, I don't think that's as big a fight anymore. I think everybody gets that kids are coming out more earlier. Kids are being picked on or perceived as being gay or perceived as being bisexual. And so school districts realize, those kids need to be protected too. So it's evolved, though, because now the case that I litigated was for a high school student who ended up committing suicide because she was being harassed, bullied, and tormented, really, from not just the students in her school, but students in neighboring high school where there were overlapping friends. And in that situation, what I realized was in the old days before social media, people could be mean to you in a classroom and then maybe 10 to 15 people heard it. Or they're mean to you on a bus, or they say something or do something that's threatening and only a few people got to hear it once. But now it's repeated, as somebody said, 24/7, and it's out there forever. And when you think of all of the developments in the social media and the ability to bully and make it loud and clear to everybody, not just in your classroom or your bus, but now your school and all school districts, the entire community now knows. It is a huge problem that school districts, teachers, my understanding, some people in the room are students who are going to become teachers someday, they're teachers here. You guys are on the front lines of keeping this from happening because you're the ones that are going to get sued. You're the ones that have to figure out, I need to send this student to the counselor because we've got a big problem here because the words and what's being said to her is affecting her so much more than it would maybe affect another student in a different classroom. And we need to protect everybody. The case that I was involved with, the student took a naked photo of herself. Somehow, it got all over the school district and the neighboring school district. Well, there are a couple of different ways that happened. The boyfriend at the time had the picture texted to him, and they then broke up. So at the time that she sent him the picture, she's thinking, I trust him, I love him, he loves me and respects me, and 15 minutes later, that's completely undone. Was she thinking of that when she took the photo? Was she thinking of that when she sent it? She also was on spring break with her girlfriends, who turned out not to be such good girlfriends because they stole her phone. And they found the photo on her phone, and they sent it out to other people. So here are the people, and she didn't know about that because she didn't know that they had taken her phone, and I don't know how they had her password, maybe the phone wasn't password protected, and she didn't know about that till she got back to school. And everybody started calling her a whore and a porn star and all kinds of horrible names, and she stopped going to class, and she came this close to not graduating because she couldn't even face going into school anymore. And this case is so old now, when I think about it, is from 2008 when this all happened. And that's 6 years ago. And back then, I didn't even know the word sexting. And now sexting seems so old-fashioned, not even like a real word anymore. But at the time, it was big news, and the local TV news reporter got a hold of the story, interviewed this girl, aired it on the local news. She was in disguise. You knew who she was. But if you didn't know her name, couldn't identify, her voice was changed, she had a hoodie, and she was in the dark, and everybody in the school knew who she was. School, all the way up to the superintendent. They all knew that she was on TV, and she was trying to educate other kids. Don't do this, don't take pictures, don't let your phone get taken, don't let this happen to you. And she ended up just in tears. I mean, it was just a horrible, heart-wrenching story to watch because she was so upset. And you could see that, anybody watching that. And that all resulted in nothing happening to really nobody helping her. And she ended up graduating. Completely unrelated, one of her friends committed suicide. She went to his funeral and came home and she committed suicide. And we don't know why and what happened at that moment. We didn't sue for wrongful death because we couldn't prove it. But we did sue all those kids, her girlfriends, her boyfriend, and the school district. Really for the purpose of saying, you shouldn't have done this. Before there was social media, before Twitter, before the internet, before YouTube, before cell phones, you still couldn't do this stuff to people. I mean, still a violation of law to lie about somebody. The celebrities being tormented. I mean, there is still slander and libel and false light, and all of those laws still exist. In Title IX, which is one of the laws that I use, that's still out there to protect people. But I think in looking at the cases that I've had, the hardest job is the teachers, because you guys are on the front lines, you know what's happening. You know that Snapchat doesn't disappear in 10 seconds. I mean, whoever said that, I'm like cracking up, because people don't take a screenshot.
Yeah.
It doesn't disappear. My granddaughter took a picture of me one morning in my nightgown, and she sent it on to her friends, and I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm just sending it to my friends. It'll disappear in 5 seconds." I said, "No, Mom." And then she said, "Why did you do that? And don't you think about asking permission? How do I look? And I hear crazy." And there is so lack of privacy nowadays because everybody's got a cell phone, and you have absolutely no control over it. So when you do have control over it, these kids need to be educated that they need to protect themselves, and they need to protect their friends, not to do things like that to them. All right, so I'll get off
Now, I have a question for you, actually. I have a question for you, because I've always wondered this. When we have parents that are saying that their child is being bullied at school, whether it's online, and it's something that just won't go away, why is it they just can't go to the police department? Why do they, like I always hear that the school's not doing anything, but I would think if somebody beat up on my child or was targeting my child or posting photos, I could just go and file some charges.
We sued the police officer too. The school resource officer was a local police officer assigned to that high school, and we sued him. We were not successful against him because he looked at it not as a crime. He looked at one crime, and that was minor sexual material. Here's a naked picture of a minor being circulated amongst cell phones electronically. That's a crime. She was 18. She had turned 18 in the spring. So he's like, it's not my crime. So he wouldn't prosecute. He didn't go any further. He didn't look at it. And of course, there were other laws, criminal laws that could be used. But you can't sue a prosecutor not to file, criminal charges. You can file your civil case, which is what we did. But it was difficult. We also used the Constitution, and we're civil rights lawyers here. We sue people for civil rights violations, all kinds of things, but includes equal protection. And we were saying that they were treating a sexual harassment using a cell phone differently than other types of sexual harassment, and you can't do that. You got to treat it all the same. And the same argument will be for the cops. So I would agree, there could be liability for the police, and the police should intervene, because that's the kind of education people need. It's like, wait a minute, I'm doing something, I'm going to get sued, and these kids got sued, but who paid?
Parents.
Mom and Dad's insurance company, because all their homeowners insurance had to kick in. And when school districts get sued, their insurance company pays. When the teachers get sued, I mean, it shouldn't have to wait till we get to the point of, there's a lawsuit here, because this is, it causes great harm, and I think the psychologist on your panel probably could speak to that a lot better than I can, because my client was dead before I ever got to bring her case.
Any questions? If I can fill an hour, but.
This is more for a legal question. If the child is a minor, if they're under the legal age of consent, can't any person that distributes that photo be charged with distribution of child pornography?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Talk loud. No, she didn't hear you. Just talk
Okay.
louder.
If the person in the photo is a minor at the time that the photo is taken, can't any person that sends forward that photo be charged with distribution of child pornography?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's a crime. I know Ohio law. I don't know Tennessee law, but I would assume it's similar throughout the country. Yeah. So the naked photos or the sexually explicit photos, they're going to get the person that took it and sent it, and anybody who disseminates it afterwards. They're all liable.
So there's a good question on Twitter. Does cyberbullying happen more often for men or for women? Because it does seem like most of the cases we've talked about thus far are more female-oriented. So can anybody speak to that?
From an adult standpoint, from what I've seen during the morning hours and overnight, I actually see more men that are more fired up and say things where you just kind of go, you know, you might be pushing some boundaries. The women, no, I see more men from
And
my
I would
shift.
say, I don't know, we have a lot more women on our profile page because we're an ABC station. We generally cater towards a women audience. So I would say I see a lot of women, but I don't know if it's proportionate to look at. But I would say as far as our talent goes, I mean, we've had a lot of people that say kind of hurtful things to our talent. And a lot of that is targeted towards women and looks and all of that. So
I can do a separate seminar on how to deal with that for those going into on-air news.
There's an academic site, I'll make sure I get it exactly right, Cyberbullying Research Center online, faculty from Florida Atlantic University and University of Wisconsin. They're also consultants, but I didn't write that statistic down, but they have a lot of resources there, and which may include that, or I would say they might know it. And I think, too, it depends on the anonymous sites versus the ones with the data. I'm thinking Knoxville News Sentinel, if I look in the comments there, a lot of that seems to be male-on-male bashing, you know, based on, you know, perceived political party affiliation or beliefs or religion, or so, you know, I know you're interpreting whether they're male or female because it's anonymous, but I think most of what I've seen tends to be female in business.
I guess one of the things that we've been looking at is, at least with WATE.com, we post stories and then you can see a comment section below, and we can either turn that on or turn it off, and it's automatically on. And we deal with some stories will kind of go out of control, and we'll have to go get the web director and say, okay, we need to take this off. There's just too much bashing of our viewers on the site. And we don't censor. It's more if they're attacking people on our site, then we'll take it down. And I think one of the things that we're considering is tying that with Facebook pages in order to decrease that. You know, when someone doesn't have a name, they can't be tied to something. And Facebook pages have kind of increased the amount. It's a lot harder to create a fake profile. And you can do it, but they'll take it down a lot faster. Because I think now, if you start a new Facebook page, you have to tie it to a mobile number. You have to, like, send in your email, have a valid. It's a lot more difficult to have a fake account nowadays. So.
Do you see that with adolescents, that they're more female cyberbullying cases?
Yeah, absolutely. From an adolescent perspective, I mean, the girls are just, I mean, I'd like to say that I'm never shocked, but my gosh, the things that they say to each other, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, I think that the statistics that I looked up, boys and girls are just as equally likely to be bullied, but from what I see, it's the girls are bullying one another and really going for the girls that have low self-esteem and, you know, the easy targets.
It's that whole notion of relational versus physical aggression, too. That Mean Girls, does that ring a bell for anybody? You know, that tends to be a more female approach. But I am curious now, I'm going to go back and look at the statistics for adult males. There may be more of that now that they have an outlet for it in anonymous comment sites.
Oh, that was so loud. So sorry. I was trying to be smooth. Apologies. What I was going to say regarding what you were saying about the men versus the women, I think part of the problem, and again, most of you all are what, like 19, 20, 20-ish, about that age? 21-ish? Okay. One of the... We're messing up the curve. One of the issues that I find is that because we have the internet, it is so just a part of our everyday lives. Like, half of you can't put your phone down right now. You just have to keep checking it. I mean, it is what it is. I'm the same way. It is what it is. But growing up, there were, and I'm not that old. I know I keep making it sound like I am. But growing up, there were just certain things you didn't say out loud, and you just didn't say in certain ways to the people's face. Whereas you all live in a culture now where the internet is just intertwined with your lives. So there are things that you all say because you have, you know, the brass is bigger. You just feel, you know, you feel more invincible because you're not saying it to someone's face per se. You're saying it online. and therefore it gives you that little bit of extra courage or that little bit of extra gumption, shall we say. We'll bring that word back. But that's part of the problem with what we see. Like, there are things that people will post, whether it's on our Facebook page at work or that I've even seen on my personal Facebook page, where the first thing I think is, now, would you say that to their face? You wouldn't. No way. It'd be a fight in the streets. It would be if you said half the things. And I can give you one example. Hope they're not watching right now. But we had this issue on my neighborhood Facebook page where a neighbor was saying some things where I was like, there is no way that they would say this to the other neighbor's face. Because we would have to call KPD. There would be a fight. And part of the issue is you become desensitized as a generation. You don't like, manners are out of the window, and it's like, I just said it on Facebook, it's no big deal, grow up, it's not that big a deal. It is a big deal. It's people's feelings, it's their reputation, it's who they are. Part of who you are is how people perceive you. That's a part of your identity. So until we start getting a hand on social media etiquette, which I feel like that's our thing every day, our social media etiquette, we're going to continue to say things that really do harm people seriously.
I know, just from managing kind of a brand, I know we've had talks before about how to respond to certain comments, and Tearsa's like, oh, I got to reel myself in, but being a brand, managing a brand, being an on-air talent, and, you know, technically Tearsa is a brand. She signed a contract where she has to act a certain way.
I'm always representing WATE. Even when I want to really tell you something, I have to remember I'm representing WATE.
And I know in the news we've had a couple instances where reporters, anchors have been fired over what they've said online. Yeah. And managing a brand page, you really have to take that into consideration and double check what you say before you actually say it, especially if it's something that's negative towards you. You say, thank you for the feedback. I'm going to pass this on to my news director, my general manager. We really appreciate you giving us the time. Whereas what you would really want to say is something you wouldn't necessarily post.
What would you want to say, Annie? Go ahead and say what you want to say.
I'll email it to you later. So.
Yeah, no, that is one of the things we do struggle with is trying to make sure that you're, in our business, it's almost like people can offend you, you can't offend people back. Even if they are saying the worst things, sometimes it's best to just go, thank you for your comment, just walk away. And it's one of the things that we do have to do, yeah.
I talked to several.
I was going to ask y'all, what do you tell a kid to do when they're saying, I'm getting bullied on Facebook? I mean, what I would say is, well, then just delete it because you don't have to have Facebook.
Well, and we do, but then that creates another issue, which is they feel very isolated when they do that because the people that they are friends with, that's one less connection. That, you know, most kids nowadays, they don't talk on the phone, they text,
That's right.
You know, tweet, they go on Facebook. So it's a catch-22 for them a lot of times, you know. Sometimes I'll say, well, take it down and then put another one up. Or, I mean, you can block people on Facebook, but, yeah, it's just not as simple as that, unfortunately.
And it's not fair. Why should this person have to give up something they enjoy because the other person doesn't have manners?
Right.
One thing I will say, just from what she's saying about taking things down, one thing we notice, don't tell this secret, but if people don't have tight security measures on their Facebook page, like when we need to go find pictures of someone, you know, like, oh, so-and-so was arrested today. Well, let's see if they got a Facebook picture because we need a photo. Well, there are so many times, don't tell, there are so many times where even when we've done stories about UT students and we need to look at stuff, you'd be surprised how many of you all have the worst security settings in life. And I've seen pictures of kids at clubs. I've seen pictures where, thank goodness there wasn't Facebook when I was 19 and 20, but there is Facebook and Twitter for you all. And it's so easy to go on for the kids that don't like the other kid. They just go on their page. It's no big deal. So until parents become more computer savvy and more internet savvy and talk to their kids about your settings, not only can a predator find you, but the kid who's the mean girl can get to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I've covered my business name here, we actually have looked at Facebook before we hire.
Absolutely.
My company does that too.
Absolutely.
Check out your Facebook
That's-
page.
That you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Graduate schools, even high schools. Some private high schools will look before they'll decide to admit a student. So it's not uncommon.
Take note to that, young UT students getting ready to graduate. Did you have a question, Byron? Okay.
I know, like, this day and age, like, my Facebook used to be much more, like, I would talk about, like, my social life more.
But as businesses and like people I'd like to work for getting on Facebook, I definitely don't post anything personal. It's all like anything I post, I wouldn't care whoever saw it. Like I'd be proud of it. So do you find that bullying is just as bad as it was like when Facebook was like getting popular? Because I feel like people are monitoring what they post more than what they used to. Or I don't know if that's just like a college thing, but I know personally, I've cleaned up my Facebook a lot.
I mean, I would disagree. I would think that you probably are the exception because, I mean,
Trust, you are.
whenever we're researching stuff for stories, I mean, we check out people's Facebook pages all the time, you know, try to find them, find where they are, how they contact them. And some of the things that people post on their page, I mean, you know everybody, you know where to find their house, you know, we've had stories that we've covered where people have robbed people because they're posting their address and when they're out of town. And I mean, you hear about that and you think it would never happen to you, but it's happened to a lot of people in the Knoxville area in the past couple of months. So.
So I do have a question. I guess first statement. I was doing some research this weekend, knowing I was going to help lead the panel, and the CDC actually calls this electronic aggression, which I found was quite interesting. Not cyberbullying, not cyberstalking, but electronic aggression. And the CDC estimates that as many as 35% of teens have experienced some kind of electronic aggression through cell phones, email, instant messaging, text messaging, chat rooms, blog postings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're hearing a lot from college students that are kind of media savvy. Like we said, she's kind of not the norm, if that's the case. And Jennifer, I guess maybe this is directed towards you, but what I also read this weekend is that there's a little bit more and more of this electronic aggression that goes without stating, say, a name or tagging someone in a picture or maybe just tweeting a lot of really negative comments about someone without naming the person because there's concern about legal repercussions and such. How is that handled in terms of legal issues when it's maybe 2 or 3 people that know what's going on, they know kind of who the bully is, who the person is who on the receiving end, but there's actually no name ever attached to the negative comments? Is there anything legally that can be done in that regard?
I think I got most of your question, but I would say a cease and desist letter from a lawyer can get people to take stuff down.
Okay.
I've certainly done that for clients, or I've contacted, I don't know, I had a lot of problems with bloggers for a while and saying things, and I contacted, Blogspot, and Google's got this whole set up, and I mean, you can basically say they're violating the rules, take them down. If they take down what's wrong with what we're saying is wrong, is untrue, slander or libel. But, a lot of times it's close. It's just mean, or it's not necessarily rise to the level of litigation because did it really cause great harm to the person, or is it just making them mad? There is, you have to have severe damages to sue for things like that. But we do try to take things down. But to be successful, I think you got to hire a lawyer. I mean, it won't cost you much to write a letter, but to write a letter and say, please take this down, or write to the service provider saying, take this down. I've been successful sometimes, and I will say I've been totally unsuccessful in getting blogs removed after my client died because nobody knows the password. And some of the providers won't do anything about it. And I can't get it taken down because we don't have a password and we're not the person who set it up. And I've had to, threaten to go to litigation over that, but it's sad because not only did somebody post something, it's going to be up there forever.
Jennifer, you've had experience working with school systems. I have a question. If a teacher sees or is aware of bullying happening, or if a student comes to the teacher saying that they have been bullied or harassed, and the school system ignores it, what recourse does the teacher have? What would you advise the teacher to do?
I got the last part of the question, what to do if the school district ignores harassment. Complain and marketing, don't stop complaining. Complain and tie up as the superintendent, the president of the school board, whoever you can talk to, because without putting them on notice that there's a problem, there's too much going on in their daily lives to be focused on this, because they're going to chalk it up to kids will be kids, and words don't really hurt anybody, so this isn't really going to cause a problem. But words really do hurt people, and it escalates, and it becomes impossible for the students to learn. So, I've been successful, just a phone call to the school district saying, get this, pay attention, when to end up the litigation, solve this problem. And nowadays, I think the school districts that I've seen have good policies. Now their sex harassment policy says you cannot harass based on including all the sexual orientation language, and including cyberbullying and Facebook, and doing it, some schools are progressive enough to say even off-campus stuff like that is prohibited in our school district. And student handbook, all this, all right, great, you got a good piece of paper, but you got to enforce it, which means mom and dad and student need to complain, and the school district then should just be following their policy. And the policy probably says they should investigate it, and if somebody needs to be disciplined, they'll be disciplined. You don't necessarily get to know that. It's none of your business, because that's between the school and that child that's being disciplined. But if that happens and the harassment ends, that's a success. That's exactly the way it should work. It's not going to stop the harassment the first time, but it should put an end to it so it doesn't get worse and it doesn't continue. And if another kid, all right, let's say that kid got disciplined, and then his buddy starts doing it, fine, investigate him and get him disciplined and get him to knock it off. And just keep knocking it, investigating it and telling everybody this policy isn't just on a piece of paper in writing. This is the policy. We're going to supervise, we're going to enforce it, and we're going to train our students, our teachers, parents, everybody needs to be educated. But without complaining and making a big stink about it in your school, and as a lawyer, I would love people to do all that in writing, because that creates a great track record, especially when the school district replies to something not appropriate. But that stuff should be taken care of early, and it doesn't have to wait to the point where students are so harmed that they need to seek psychological treatment or end up doing harm to themselves.
So we have a question from Twitter. A good shout out for ABC, which we love.
All right.
Has anybody seen the movie on ABC Family called Cyberbully? Yeah? So Holly Olson on Twitter asked if the movie Cyberbully gives a good depiction of what cyberbullying is like for current adolescents. I haven't seen it.
I'm normally asleep when I'm home. Because I get up at 2:30 in the morning, so I have not seen cyberbullying. Quick synopsis?
I have not seen it, but I have had some of my female teenagers who have seen it and have suggested that we watch it in groups. So saying that it is, yes, a good depiction of current cyberbullying.
I personally thought it was hilarious. Not like the bullying.
Explain yourself, maybe.
Yeah.
Have you done writing?
Yeah.
The drama in it was just ridiculous, and it was kind of horrible acting, and that's why I couldn't stop laughing while I was watching it. I mean, the content wasn't really funny. It was kind of messed up, but if that's somebody's actual life, I understand why it's horrible. But it's a funny movie. You should watch it.
I agree that the acting wasn't the best, but the outcome of what happened, I think, is realistic, and people don't realize. I understand why you think it's funny. It was kind of cheesy at some parts, but it's definitely awesome. The girl from Hannah Montana, so that's fun. And yeah, because a lot of stuff that people talk about that people don't hear about is what the movie's about. So I think it's a good message, an eye opener. Some cheesy acting too, but yeah, I think it was pretty representative of what goes on.
Now, you all are young adults. Do you all experience what's cyberbullying like for collegiates? Or does it exist, or do you just kind of go, sticks and stones?
It's a lot on Twitter, under the radar and stuff.
Like passive aggressive, saying but not saying.
Names, but you can say really mean things that are just it's not mentioned, but it's just hey, we can do that.
Okay, adults do that too. Adults out of school, because you all are adults. like junior adults.
Maybe I'm a dinosaur, but I don't use Twitter at all. But on Facebook,
I don't either.
I find that I know people. I know people. I can communicate with people I add, and I only have people like I'm friends with or on good terms. And so therefore, it allows me to not to deal with anything like this.
Yeah, and that's smart. Yeah.
There's a much better movie that's not nearly as cheesy called Sinned, and I was at South by Southwest last month, and they debuted it. And it's a 7-minute movie, capital letters SEND, and the storyline is basically a girl who sends her boyfriend goes off to camp, and she misses him, and she's following him on Facebook, and he's doing all these cool things. He's winning his lacrosse games. He's having a good time, and the way that they demonstrate social media in that movie is that he's on stage like a drama, and there's an audience in the crowd watching his posts. And so the camera goes back and forth between watching her, and she's all excited, and she's crying because her boyfriend's talking to her. And as the camera pans out, it's basically a large group like this. And you can guess the rest of the people, well, they just don't care. They're reading books, they're on their phones, they're sharing their own tweets, and the message is kind of about how it is an anonymous message many times where we share something and we think it's really important and we care, and the audience doesn't. Well, at one point, she shares a nude photo of herself. And she's like, baby, I love you. Here's my body. I miss you. What would you do to me? And he shares it with his friends. And it goes right into the discussion from Ohio about the lawsuit and the eventual suicide. If you get a chance to watch the movie, it's incredible. I mean, it really moved me. I do social media research, and it caused me to think quite a bit. But the question from that video is, how do we educate social media users about ownership of information? Right? Because a lot of times it seems what's happening is that we think the information is so incredibly important, which is why it has these long-lasting psychological and sometimes physical effects. And not to sound as if I'm shifting blame by any means, but there is a concept that's missing, is that just because you post something doesn't mean everybody cares. And I've often wondered about how we can educate those perceptions, or the people who are being bullied. Is that an issue where they think that this bit of information, because it's about them, is the focal information for the entire community, when in fact, of course, there's lots of information out there. And I've always wondered about this dichotomy between I share something, or rather somebody shares something about me. In social science research, you talk about communication privacy management, and the idea is that information is owned until you share it, and oftentimes where dissonance comes is when somebody else shares things that you didn't give them permission to. So do you see that playing a role in cyberbullying, where folks feel like they had something stolen from them? Is it an ownership thing? Is it an audience thing?
I see that a lot with adolescents. I mean, without giving too much information, I remember a girl that I had probably a few months ago. She had a boyfriend. The boyfriend cheated on her with another girl. She knew that this other girl had been pregnant maybe a year before, and so she very passively posted, "At least I'm not a cheater who kills babies," and everybody in the school knew who it was. So I do see that a lot, especially with the girls. Yeah,
it's such a tricky. I don't know. It's such a fine line. I don't know how do you regulate that? Is that something that legally you would have to look at? Because I kind of see it as if I knew a secret that Annie told me, and then I went and told these two ladies, could she sue me, or what would be the repercussions? So I don't know if it changes because we're talking online versus your normal communication.
I would just say, I think that having discussions kind of like that about what people can see, because I think people, they just don't make that connection. For instance, President Obama came to Chattanooga, last year, and one of our producers, she asked me, hey, I want to find somebody from Knoxville that is traveling down there that we can interview when we get there, because we're going to have a tight turnaround on a story. So I put something up on our Facebook page, and I say, hey, are you traveling? He's coming. If so, please email me, asadler@wat.com. Well, it just erupted with all sorts of comments, and you can kind of imagine, I'm sure, from being around there was pro-Obama. I didn't get anybody to interview, long story short, but I did get death threats against the president, and I had Secret Service call me, and it wasn't state Secret Service, it was National Secret Service, and it turns out one guy was saying, I want to kill the president, and going back and forth with another woman on there. I mean, it was kind of a cyberbullying on the post, but it wasn't a direct attack on It was kind of more of their ideals. So it was something I wouldn't necessarily take down, and I was regulating some of it, but you can't watch every single comment when you're having thousands and thousands of them coming in every day. And she submitted it to the Secret Service, and I got a call asking questions, and they went and investigated it. And I think people just don't realize sometimes that what you put, even if it's something everybody else is bashing the president on a news site, it can get back to National Secret Service.
How does it go with that? I'm the director of an environmental network Facebook page that puts way smaller, only like 1,500 likes. And a lot of times, like people that are like climate change deniers or something, they'll put a comment on there, and I'm in charge of it, and I have no idea what to do, so I just don't do anything. But what would advice be on there? Like a post, obviously, a group that basically everybody that follows it is supposed to believe that. Most of the time it's when somebody likes it and someone else views it from their page and comments on it. I just don't do anything about it, but I thought about deleting them, but I really don't think I can censor someone. I mean, it's our page, so I guess I can delete it if I want to, but what should I do?
If it's something violent, if it is something that goes against, now if it's just like, climate change, then, well, you got to kind of let that stay because they're just voicing their opinion. But if it's like, death to all the people who are about climate, whoa, I always take a screenshot of everything. Like anytime when Annie was talking about people bullying people that are on air, anytime somebody has said anything to me that was just a little out of pocket, and more than just like, I don't like your hair, but like real things, I always screen grab those just in case legally, it comes full circle and I find out this person is outside of the parking lot. So with that said, I would go ahead, keep your records, just know if something seems scary. But yeah, it's your page.
I mean, I do think that there is a difference between, and I'm not sure what type of page there is, but obviously we're a news page, so censoring something like that, I mean, that's kind of against our ethical, what we're about. So, I mean, obviously we have a comment policy that we follow. For instance, we take down posts that directly, attack viewers on our page.
Right.
But I think if you're a page that's something else, like you're a page that's promoting good environments, perhaps you have different rules to follow. And a lot of that's a case-by-case basis. And I think that's what social media is. When you're managing a page, if I go over to Coca-Cola and try to manage their Facebook page, it's going to be very different from our news page. And that's what makes it unique. So.
And see it as an opportunity also to talk to that person. That's one thing I have learned now that we are more, social media savvy, journalism generation, is it's a great opportunity to talk to people. I've had people that have said mean things, but by the time I'm done, we're best friends. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you may start out with, you call yourselves a news organization. This is not news. Well, what are you talking about? Talk to me. And by the time I'm done, they're like, all right, see you on Wednesday. And I'm like, all right now. You just kind of work it.
One of the things Tearsa does very well is she uses comments with kind of humor, and she kind of brings that in. And I mean, you can't be mean to somebody that's kind of cracking a joke about yourself.
And one thing I've noticed, especially being a clean energy type thing, the people that comment against that are first off kind of crazy anyways, and they're crazy enough to comment about it. So there's no talking to them because they will just come back to you with something that's crazier. Hey,
thanks. Want more information? Go to blah-blah-blah.com. Thank you for checking out our page. Done.
So when do you delete and when do you report? Somebody threatened the president. So do you feel like obligated to call the Secret Service? Isn't that you kind of responsible now that you saw that?
I mean,
it was a viewer within that thread that saw it.
And they were kind of having a battle back and forth and ended up.
So let's say on Jake's page here, somebody put something very threatening.
Oh,
is he
KPD.
Responsible to delete it or just?
Oh, I'm all about tax dollars. I pay for KPD if you threaten me online. Because if not, then, in my opinion, if you keep letting things go, if you keep going, well, they don't mean that, and you just take it down, to me, this is how we get to where we are today talking about. So until people start seeing, hi, this is Officer so-and-so because you said something, it's not going to die down. That's my opinion.
And I mean, we've had issues with people writing suicide notes on Facebook.
Yep.
And I'll watch the thread, and I saw it. I got off work, and I work late nights. So I think I got off, and it was midnight by the time I got home, and I'm just on Facebook, and I see the comment of her, and I'm looking down at all the other comments, and I didn't know this woman. It was a woman we had done a story on, and so then I think I friended her because of that. And people were like, oh, no, don't commit suicide. And I went and called the police. Because, I mean, there's certain things where you shouldn't just leave a comment. You should pass it on to the correct people.
Right.
Is there a big line between your opinion and your opinion turning into bullying? Does that question make sense?
See, I think part of the problem is that there needs to be better, clear definitions of what's bullying, what is like the aggression. What did you call it? Cyber aggression. See, to me, cyber aggression is what we see in the comment sections of any type of online media, whether it's newspaper or TV. A lot of times folks are just like, this is my opinion and the rest of you are wrong. And then they get aggressive about it. And then there's the stuff that Annie deals with where it's like, okay, I think you just threatened somebody's life. Or someone that, like we have certain people that kind of troll a lot. They're just, every comment, they're always nitpicking at several people, but they kind of come, you almost end up knowing them, like you're like, well, there's John Doe again, here we go. And that's like, oh, we know the people on, like, you know, if they're watching, hey, good afternoon, we know the people that are regulars, they're always on there. And there are people who like to troll, and to me, that is a form of bullying, as opposed to, this is my opinion and the rest of you are wrong.
But I think it also depends on the content. For instance, Christian Newsom retrials. I mean, that was a very big event in our community. And I had to talk with our news director about what kinds of comments we were going to allow because, you know, normally if we're reporting on just run-of-the-mill, I mean, not run-of-the-mill, but just a normal story that we would run, some of the comments I wouldn't leave. But for that, it was such a big incident in our community, we kind of made a decision to maybe leave some of them were a little bit more graphic, just because I had 5,000 comments that were graphic. You can't go through and hide all of those. You just can't. So. I mean, I think we try to do any of that, but then again, I mean, it's hard to police that. I mean, especially with how Facebook is.
Yeah.
And Twitter, obviously, you can't police that at all because our profile is public. If someone tweets something to somebody else and finds them on there, I can't do anything about that. Our Facebook page, we have blocked a few people, and it's, I mean, we have, 96,000 likes on our page now, and I think we've blocked probably 8 people in the past year and a half. So it's not a whole lot, but I know we send screenshots, again, back and forth, and I'll pass them to Tearsa and our news director as well.
I think it just depends on, and also depends on the situation. You know, there's one thing to state your opinion. There's one thing, especially on heated stories, but there's another thing to completely offend or to keep commenting, knowing that you're offending people over and over again. I take those down because you're not serving a purpose. You're not here for the conversation. You're here to fire people up, and not in the right way. So I do take those down. One of the things I had to explain to a viewer, and because they were a regular, I felt comfortable enough to explain. He made a comment. It wasn't the Christian Newsom, but it was something like one of those wild stories in another state. And they were like, hang them up, or hang them dead, or something. I had to explain. I said, now you do know that is offensive to, especially folks, to anyone who is into justice, but especially African Americans. And I just did I'll just kind of tell you why. And they never quite understood why that would have been so. And they were just like, thanks, I really did. You know how you just kind of know the person doesn't get it? In that situation, I could talk to that person, but for the hundreds that I don't know, I take them down. Yeah.
You mentioned that you took like screenshots of the particularly offensive things, but like you said, you know, if someone comments about your hair or something, it's not the biggest deal. But do you get a lot of that? Like I feel like as a woman, like on TV, is that something you have to deal with a lot?
Yeah, I mean, we get our own version of cyberbullying. I'm just not a very sensitive person, so it doesn't bother me. You know, I'm fortunate. It takes a lot. The one thing that ever got me was the woman that said she hated my eyebrows. That's the only one. I am dead serious. This woman posted on Facebook, I kid you not, I've told this story. She commented not to me, not emailed me. This is on the WATE Facebook page. She was like, I hate Tearsa Smith's eyebrows. And I was like,
I think they're fabulous, Tearsa.
Well, thank you. And I said, you know what? If that is the worst thing you can find out about me, I mean, okay, it is what it is. But anything else pretty much doesn't bother me. I think, you know, there are people who say mean things because they don't see you as a person. They don't see, you know, me as the mommy, sister, wife. They don't see that. So they sometimes, again, you get the big, you know, I'm going to tell her how I feel. I don't like the way she read that story. I think she likes Obama. She smiled at the end of that story. And then they'll like comment to me like 50 times. Why'd she smile all the time? You know, so you have to kind of, I'll talk to people, but if it becomes berating, I keep all my evidence. There's one file on my computer, and if you've ever said anything bad to me, like not like just like, I hate your eyebrows, but if it really is negative things, if it's a racial slur or something about me as a woman, you know, I keep all that so that when it's time to contact the lawyer and we go to KPD, here's my file.
But I think one of the things that we talked about in yesterday's panel, I guess in politics, I know Rohero and Tim Burchett were addressing incidents, and they said some comments you just don't respond to because you're not going to change their opinion. You just leave them. So, but I think you have to pick and choose your battles for what you're going to deal with. So.
Yeah. How does the debate go with, a lot of people like to save their comments with LOL or laugh out loud, you know, try to say that they're just joking. So how does the debate go when, you know, you may look at it as cyberbullying, but they may look at it as a joke? Get what I'm trying to say?
Are you talking about on the adult level? Or
on the adult level? I guess it would have been a legal question but she left on Skype, so yeah. But like, I guess when you're searching through and people are saying, I mean, this is really, really harsh, and I hope people want to say LOL, like if someone commented like, you know, I'll kill you, LOL, you know, even though they think they're just joking, but that's a really serious comment. So would you go and report that, or would you say, well, maybe they're just joking because they wrote LOL?
No, I would call, I'm one of those people, I call the police. I'm that person. I think, do you wait to find out if that person is joking or not? Would you, you all seem like nice folks. Your parents have got you into college. You seem like all decent people. Would you ever jokingly say to someone in real life, I'll kill you, ha ha ha, just jokes? No, you would be like, right. I think this person they're saying they're going to kill me, LOL. So I think for you all as young people on the internet, know that the way you speak doesn't come across, and that's something I've had to learn. The way you speak doesn't come across in text. So I have dry humor. I had to realize that sometimes I can't say certain things in my public profile or on the WAT page because not everyone gets my dry humor. So to just throw LOL at the end doesn't make you safe. It doesn't.
Last question.
Call the police. Call the police.
Okay, my question was, did you think that her name was Rhonda Lee and she got fired for defending herself, the weather woman?
Out of Louisiana.
Yeah. Do you think that her approach to the racist comment on Facebook was needed, or, you know, even though she got fired and she was told by Human Resources she wasn't supposed to defend herself, but like if you're caught in a situation like that, do you think it's best to defend yourself and your culture, or do you just leave it alone?
As a person, I would say go get them, you know. But as a social media manager, she signed a contract. I mean, she has it in writing. She signed it. She knows what she's not allowed to do on the public profile. And I mean, she is a representative of her station. So would it have been better just to not respond it? Would she have had her job? Yes. But I mean, it's a difficult thing to address. And I think it's something that is just, it's the facts of life. You know, if you're representing something, you just kind of have to smile and take it sometimes.
With that said, as a person of color, I would really hope that her job would defend her. If she signed a contract saying that she can't express her opinion in a way that defends her person, her beauty aesthetic, then companies have to be responsible to step up for you and say something that is legally not going to put them in a bind, but says, you know what? This is who we hired. We love her talent. This is what she does, and we love her look. Thank you so much for watching. You know, at some point, it's not fair to tell someone they can't defend themselves in any way, and you're not going to do it either.
And that's something that's good about having, obviously, Tearsa has a public profile that is WATE, Tearsa Smith, and then we have the 6 News. So a lot of times we can respond as WAT 6 News to things that are personal attacks on our station and kind of diffuse that.
Right.
So what an awesome session, right? Let's thank our 4 panelists. We will thank Jennifer. You did a great job. I have some giveaways really quick. I hope you all signed the sign-in sheet. Uh-oh. Okay, well, here's the good news. We have 4 quick giveaways based on the sign-in sheet, and the rest of you all are going to leave with free food coupons. How about that?
All right.